So, welcome to the podcast, Valerie.
Thanks for having me.
I am really excited for this conversation, and hang on to your hats. We have the dating doula in the house.
Yes. I'm here. What do we need to do? Who needs to get taken care of?
When I read that, I was like, oh, there's so much that has to do with any kind of relationship, whether it's dating, and it all starts within, whether it's our business, it's figuring out what we want. So I want to know first, like, how did you get to be called the dating doula?
Well, it's funny. My friend and I, we were talking about relationships and just how actually falling in love. And the old amusement park was like the tunnel of love, right? It was dark and people were making out or whatever, right? Like the tunnel of love. So we turned that into like the birth canal of love, like when to start a relationship, to get two people together and keep that thing going, like it is like giving birth, right? There's like blood, sweat, and tears, and sometimes it hurts, and there's a lot of joy and a lot of gratitude. But finding love, especially I think in our modern culture, is really hard. And so I just found that I was just working with a lot of women that were looking for love. And I actually think our society is pretty rough on women who are looking for love. So many expectations, so many judgments. And I don't think it has to be that way. So I'm here to help on that road to love. And it just came out of my work with women. If you look at my sort of bio on my website, you'll see that I joke that my degree in marriage and family therapy saved my relationship, but it's not really that much of a joke. Like, it's kind of true. And so I just found so many great principles that were sort of, I call it like we distill the secret sauce of relationship counseling, and break them up into bite-sized pieces that anybody could use in any form of communication, honestly, because right, like people wait too long to go to relationship counseling. And if you ask a straight man if he wants to go, right, like the odds are is like, I'd rather go get my teeth pulled, like, right. And it's tough, like it's tough to untangle when you've waited too long. But inside of like couples counseling, there's so many great skills that if we just front load them, right, then maybe the road won't be so bumpy. Ooh. So that's how I got here.
That's awesome. But sometimes those bumpy roads are a lot of fun, I do have to say. I'm like, all right, let's see what's today.
Okay. So I'm workshopping this description as I workshop a lot of like analogies. Okay. So I'm workshopping this description because I have a lot of people tell me, like, why is dating so, why is it so difficult? And I'm like, look, these are strangers, right? You don't know. Like if you go up to a new dog that you don't know, right? You're just like, you're cautious because you're like, I don't know this dog. Is it going to bite me? Is it going to play? Right? Like, does it like people? And like, but we just kind of rush in dating. And like, if you were to date a coworker that you saw every day, like, yeah, Jim brings his lunch every day and, he says hi and he's kind of nice and, oh, but don't get it. Like you kind of know him. And so dating him wouldn't be such a wild roller coaster, right? But a total stranger, it could be a wild ride. You have no idea what you're in for. And that's why we feel like it's such a thrilling ride when we're trying to date.
I love that. And I see that in any relationship. Like I was mentioning before, entrepreneurship. Let's talk about you learn to date yourself because you're in your business a lot in the beginning. And then you have to work on this. You mentioned this part about communication and showing up and having the tools before you get to the place where you actually are like, I need this counseling. I need this therapy.
Yeah.
If not, I'm out. So what are some of those tools that kind of you wish that people knew before they got to that point?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think even bringing it back to entrepreneurship and your business and I'm sort of just getting my toes wet into this, building like this coaching side of my business. I've been a therapist for a while, but my husband is like a serial entrepreneur, and it's like international. So he's gone a lot. And I'm just like, but okay. Well, this is like advanced. This is an advanced skill, but I think that one of the great things about a long-term relationship is you really need to know when to compromise and when actually compromise isn't the right move. Like if he
Oh.
would have compromised to the level that I wanted him to compromise, I don't think his business would have ever taken off. I don't think it would have gotten to the success that he did. And then that would have just brought so much other turmoil, right? But I thought it was real fair. Like this is how many days I think you could be gone. He's like, I need more. And I'm like, why are you being so mean to me? Do you even care about this relationship? But the Gottmans, who have an institute on couples, they're like one of the experts. The Gottman Institute, like they talk about just that people sometimes compromise too much. So you really have to know what's your dream within the conflict, and get those like concentric circles smaller to see what part you really can't compromise and what part is up for negotiation. Because, right, like I also talk about centering yourself, how that's so important, there's nobody else that has that job but you. We know very easily that we can relate to the analogy of taking your oxygen mask. You have to put your own on first on a plane, right? And but our culture has somehow taken centering yourself and made us feel selfish for doing it, right? But I think that one thing that I really wish everyone knew before they went into a relationship is self-mastery. Who are you? What do you need? What do you bring to the table? What are some of your triggers or your enduring vulnerabilities, as we call them? Like I've started asking clients, what's your plant stick? Like if you had to break down your self-care into like three things, right? Like your level of sun, your level of watering, and like, how your soil content, right? Like that little plant stick gives you just enough. And so I tell clients, like, figure out your plant stick, because when you get really stressed, you just need to know, okay, for me, it is sun, it's people, and laughter. Like if I need to de-stress, I could throw music in there too, but those are my three things. And so I encourage everyone, find your plan stick, know yourself. How can you expect someone else to come in and meet your needs and build this life with you if you don't know yourself? And I think you can take that and, apply that to your business life as well. You need to really know yourself.
You can apply that to every aspect of your life. There is
Hmm.
nothing more powerful than knowing yourself. And I know this just from last year. I went on a retreat, and our first question that we had to write in a journal about was, who am I? And I sat there for 20 minutes and I couldn't even put my name on my page because I was like,
Mm,
I don't know anymore. So I think that what you're saying
mm,
about that plant stick is, it's so simple, yet it's so hard for many of us because we're in this culture that's taken away
mm.
that inner
Yeah.
knowing.
The inner knowing. And whether it's just our Western culture, whether it's a religion that you're involved in or you grew up in, or your culture is very self-sacrificing, right? That's where the burden is, or that your body isn't good, or your body is like, it has these evil desires. I think that that's the shame. In some, where things have been taken too far, where we've been sort of detached from our body. So how can you know? How can you know what pleasures you? How can you know what you're even hungry for? Right? How do you know? Like there's a great trauma book called "The Body Keeps the Score," right? And it is like, that fight, flight, or freeze is stored inside of our body, and we can ask our body, just check in. If you need to make a decision, or you have like these two ways you can go, imagine going one way, and then just kind of, we call it a body scan. It's just, a fancy term for like, just kind of, scan your body and see, how's it feel? And then imagine yourself doing the other one and see how that feels. And your body can give you so much information if we just tuned in. If we just tuned in.
Yes, we forget to tune in so often. I mean, that we're in that hustle culture. We're in that let's have the instant gratification. Let's do it right now. If it's not instant, I don't want it.
Yep.
But that pause, like you were saying, the body scans, if you can get back in your body, wow, she tells you a whole bunch of things you don't want to hear.
Yeah, and it really helps. And I imagine you have some people pleasers in your audience, and I think when you're not a people pleaser, you can just say, just like, what's wrong, like just start saying no more, like just grow a backbone or whatever, right? Like whatever people think. And I realize, like, that's not it at all. People pleasing, there is this tremendous warning signal in your body that I find happens with most people who are people pleasers. That's like, don't do it. You can't have anybody mad at you. You can't let someone down. And the feeling in your body is overwhelming. And that actually, I guess, that will really stop you and stop your growth, right? As a business owner, when you're afraid. Like we have an Airbnb, and there's times where, like, I've had to confront people, and I'm like, I know I have to do it. I have to fight through this feeling, right? But it's my property. Like, I know that I'm in the right, but it's that, like, someone's going to be upset, and my body is like, don't do it. And so just learning that we can tolerate distress, we can soothe ourselves through those things, and it gets easier every time, right? So the body really does give us so much information.
Yes, it does. And I want to go back to this. Yeah, I mean, like, you've given us so many great things, but the thing that keeps popping up in my mind is this compromise, the word compromise. When you were talking about compromise, because like you said, if your husband would have compromised down to where your level was, then there's this whole other piece. But I think that shows up in compromising for ourselves and anything else, because we do compromise. Like, how did you come to the conclusion that, okay, here's what I want, here's what here's what I need, here's what he wants? How did you find that balance of compromising to that point where you're both happy, you're still married? I'm like, maybe that's two different things.
You are still married, aren't you? Yes. Okay, so the Gottmans also say that more than 60% of the issues in a relationship are unsolvable. More than 60% of the issues you have in a relationship are unsolvable. They are only manageable. I know it's a wonder that any of us stay together. But I also find that gives great relief, because I always want to find the answer. I want a solution. I want us to fix this, right? And I think that just normalizing, so part of my business, So This Is Love, I named it that because sometimes it's like, I want to be real about what romantic love is, long-term romantic love, right? So sometimes love is like, oh, so this is love. Like, I feel so well loved. And then sometimes it's like, so this is love, like, with a big old question mark. Like, this is what everyone fights so hard for, dreams about, sings songs for, starts wars for, writes sad country songs. Like, I didn't think this was in the cards. Like, this is wild. And I want to normalize that. So the more that we can normalize what it's really like to be in a long-term partnership, the better for all of us. Because our brain, right? Like, we're like, kind of this evolutionary wise, we're still in fight, flight, or freeze mode, right? So everything is a danger. We have iguanas in the yard in Florida, and like, we step by them and they run like we're going to kill them. We're not going to kill them. We're just trying to get them out of the way, right? But I just noticed, like, every move is life or death. And our our nervous systems haven't evolved to understand, like, emotional danger and, like, real life or death, right? So that's why it feels like if this person gets mad at me, it's life or death. It's not. It's not life or death. You're not going to die, but our bodies are still in this fight, flight, or freeze, right? So the compromise, it's just, it helps to normalize. So when our brain when we can say, I know what that is, that's part of our 60%. That's unsolvable. Then you can send it from like, more of like your reptilian brain up to your prefrontal cortex that can reason with it. This is where all the thought and reasoning goes, right? So then we can reason with it. Oh, okay, I know what that is, right? You hear a noise in the middle of the night, and until you know what that is, it is a burglar, right? It's an intruder, danger, right? And until you know what it is, it's danger. Then it's like, oh, that's a pigeon on my roof. I'm safe, right? So that's why I love to normalize a lot of this stuff. That 60% you're just going to manage. I know your eyes are still so big.
I'm like, for the people that are watching the video, I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, if you could see my facial expression in the actual podcast, like 60% is unsolvable. Say it's not true.
It's wild. It's wild. But if you think about, right, like, the kind of like the funny stuff of like, well, not funny, like he's dirty or she's the messy one or he's the messy one. Like, you're not solving that. You're managing that issue, right? For us, it's an ongoing thing that we manage. That's why I started telling you that, because we were still negotiating the other day of how long he was going to be gone. And it's like, this is going to be it. But, are there other things in our relationship that make it worth it? Yes. Right. And then the other thing they talk about, which I think is really important, I think for a lot of your business owners as well, this is going to be really important or helpful, that another concept is called dreams within conflict. Ooh. So a lot of times when we get stuck, it's because our dreams are inside the conflict, and that's why they feel so important and so difficult to untangle. And so asking, what's the dream inside this conflict? For my husband, it was he really needed to prove himself and be successful and get this business off the ground, and what it meant to him, and his beliefs about himself, even to like that, providing for his family, that was very important. And then for me, part of it, well, I was telling like, I didn't get married to be alone, but also some of the like, I wanted a closer knit family than what I grew up in, or like I wanted to start a family, and that was really hard when you're not in the same continent. And I wanted this closeness and to be able to create this bigger sense of community. And with him being gone, that didn't feel like it could happen. And so see how like both of our dreams were in there. So I think that that's really helpful when you're trying to understand each other as a couple, and what dreams are inside the stress and inside the issues that you're facing. And then you look into those concentric circles of what part can't you compromise and what part can you.
Oh, I'm like, there's so much there. There's so much juice inside there. I'm like, juicy.
Yeah.
There's just, I have like, my brain is like still at the 60% first off.
Yeah. I was like, sorry to drop that bomb.
I'm like, man, ruined that one. But it also is a sense of freedom, because it's like, oh, I'm not doing this wrong.
Exactly. This is par for the course. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so when you're starting to step back, because it is a step back, because if you're in conflict, there's some pretty hefty emotions in there that are going to take over. To step back to where you were both able to see, here's my needs and here's his needs. Okay, we know there's enough here to make it work. But how do you move? I mean, is it coming to someone like you for support? Is it taking the leap of faith and saying, universe is just going to make it work? Like, what is it when you can't resolve this situation where you can still have your needs met, his needs met, and kind of like co-inhabit this crazy thing we call life?
Yeah. I think that, again, getting back to that self-centering, and this is the tricky thing, because I've had people say to me like, Well, it's really easy to center yourself when you're alone, but what about when you're in a relationship? And I think like self-centering, you have to stay in that mode, but I think the biggest part is to figure out what you need. So again, being really, and I even like counsel people, like if you want to go and confront your partner about something, my best practice is to know what do you want to be different, or what do you need, what are you asking them to change. I know you're angry, but if you can't say, well, what do you need from me, because a lot of people say, well, I don't know yet. Okay, well, why don't we spend a little more time by ourselves first? Right, like, because you need to bring that. So that's why that self knowledge is so very important. So I really start there, to have both of you look at, what do you need? And again, those circles of like, well, this is really what I need. Like whether it's like I need respect, or I needed companionship, right? Like I needed my husband to be around enough. Um, and then seeing if you can work it out and see what can be done, and where you can compromise. And that not every, like there are seasons, right? There are seasons of things. Um, and I had some things that I said, well, like again, I needed us to try and move forward to have a family. And I need you to be around. So he started prioritizing weekends. Like he's like, okay, I'm not gonna, try and travel on weekends. We can spend more time together, right? Like I saw him, he kept a lot more of his promises to me, and I just saw the shift. And to be very honest, some things are just what's the word, uh they're just like the natural things in life, like circumstances. Yeah, circumstances, that's the word. His business actually got off the ground, so because we were making great sacrifices for little return.
Yeah.
And sometimes, right, just being real with like circumstances make a big difference. So his business started to become successful. And so then it was like, oh, I felt more motivated to make the sacrifice, right? Wow, I really want to support him. I love him. Like I want him to succeed. Okay, how can I make this work? I moved some things around, but also again, keeping that core of what I needed, right? Making sure I didn't lose myself, making sure it wasn't all about him and his life, being centered. Also, I talk a lot about dating. You can have solo seasons in any stage of life, right? I had some real solo seasons, and the meaning I make, like right now that I'm no longer making the meaning that like, oh, my husband doesn't care, he doesn't want to be here, right? All that stuff, like now that that meaning is gone, now it's like, okay, what can I do with this time? Like
Yes.
we've lived around San Francisco for so long that like a lot of our friends have moved away. So I get to like go visit them. Like you make it work for you, right? Like, so, okay, you're going to be gone. I'm going to go see my girlfriends, and so you find a way to make it work. But again, you can't, I love the definition of like self-care and boundaries that talks about like, you need to find the line, like ask yourself the question, when did you abandon yourself to take care of the needs of someone else?
Oh,
Right?
oh, you're speaking to my heart. I'm like, I'm a Cal Fire wife. So my husband
Mm,
works for California State Fire Department. And I'm
yeah,
like, you're talking about seasons. And I'm like, I'll see you in 3 months.
exactly. Right. Right. And just that ebb and flow. And oh, yes. Yes. Um, that can be hard, for sure. But I think that we, especially as women, have been like conditioned, socialized that sacrificing for our family, for others, is like a high calling, or the highest praise we get for sacrifice, right? Even during the pandemic, we saw, oh, mothers, thank you so much, but like got nothing, no extra childcare, right? No subsidies for childcare, whatever. It's just like, oh yeah, you're amazing, but we're not going to pay you, right? So it's really important not to abandon yourself and your needs, and to really be honest about those, and hold everything lightly, to be very honest. A lot of different marriage thought leaders talk about that you're going to be married to 6 or 7 different versions or different people, different versions of that person, right? And I like to say that the ties that bind you together, the more elastic they have in them, the more, right? The less rigid they are. If you put two giant rubber bands in between two people, you can grow, you can stretch, you can be curious about this thing, you can be gone for a few months, you can grow and evolve without those bonds breaking. But if the bonds that hold you together are brittle, it might not last. And maybe that's not the right. Like I had to come out of that. Like I grew up to believe that like divorce was the worst thing in the world. And I saw a lot of women kind of trapped in that financially, right? With the whole like, it's your fault, all these things, right? But can we normalize sometimes that people change a little too much? And maybe the best thing for both of you is for this to not go on in the same way. Is that okay? Like I know it's not a good feeling, but those things happen.
Yeah.
I'm also
like coming back to self.
Yes, coming back to self. Can I also say I'm also workshopping the idea of the 80-20 rule in relationships? Like 80% of the time, I feel incredibly well loved. I'm in love. I'm like, wow, we did this thing. Like, we have a good thing going. I'm happy. And then 20% of the time, I'm like, okay, let's call it. I think this is over. Or like, I'm just like, get out of my face. I don't want, like, this is a cautionary tale. We should not be together. Like, in 20% of the time, I'm in that phase. So I don't know. Like, can we normalize that? Can we normalize that, if that feels okay to you, whatever that number is for you, it's like a sleep number bed, whatever number is okay for you and your partner, can even your nervous system handle that? Can that be okay? And not to romanticize in an unrealistic way, that you're going to be happy and fulfilled and 100% of the time.
Oh yeah, because that's what we've been set up for, is that 100% of the time your marriage is going to look like the fairy tales that you grew up with.
Yes. We saw the dating and the courting, like, right? Like all the stories, and either at the wedding day, or they do this like flash forward a couple years, it's not, because it's the messy part of life. Like that puppy dog phase, that like honeymoon phase, I really believe that that's the only way we would fall in love with each other. We get huge hits of dopamine, and we're not seeing it. I think that dopamine blinds us to all the like each other's faults. It's just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And naturally that fades, and we're not on our best behavior anymore, and it's not all shiny. And that's where the kind of the work comes in. So I like to also say feeling well loved is amazing. And also it's not everything. You can have a rich, multifaceted life while you're waiting for love, because it's something we don't have control over. You really can't control when you find love that seems to click.
That's so true. Unless it's from yourself.
There you go. Unless it's from yourself. Yeah, you can give that to yourself all the time. All the time. I love that. Mm-hmm.
So this is love. I'm like, oh, that is so amazing. And I love that you put the two emphasis, like, so this is love. Oh, so this is love.
Yes.
So I don't really need to know how like you came to this, but what are you doing inside that? So this is love. So this is love.
The business?
Yes.
Or you mean, oh yeah. Okay.
As your business.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's the coaching side of my business. I also am a therapist in the state of California, but I wanted to expand, work with other people, work in maybe a different way, sort of, I can tell stories, like you'd be work in a different way. But I do individual coaching, couples coaching. I work with people who are dating, and we're creating a space on Instagram just to share. I talk about find, nurture, and celebrate love. Like that's a big part is um, make good memories and celebrate them often. Like that sort of, my husband's very nostalgic. And I was like, why do you keep talking about all these old stories? And then I found out that that was like an amazing thing you could do in your relationship. Like, okay, fine. You like know one good thing to do. Uh, okay, you just know as a couple, but like make good memories and revisit them often. Again, the chemicals, the dopamine. So, we're creating that space to celebrate love. But my group coaching offering right now is called Reset Yourself for Love, and that's where I talk about let me be your dating doula. And it's 6 weeks in a group format. It's for women who have kind of said, that's it, I need to take a break from love and from dating. I need to spend some time with myself. I need to kind of work on that. And we honor that intuition. You don't necessarily have to like go cold turkey with dating, but I think it's just honoring that call to kind of come into yourself and really emphasize that self-love, compassion, really understanding yourself, right? Like just like in business, you got to know your product and you got to be able to sell it, right? And you got to know like why would someone fall in love with you? Why are you amazing? Why do you deserve to be treated well, right? What do you want? What kind of life do you want to create? And I think part of my framework as well is to reclaim some of these single seasons, because it's a little bit of a lie that it's not amazing to be on your own sometimes. Like, right? We're told you need to find a man. I'm like, well, actually, it's really kind of nice sometimes not to have one, right? So, what can you do? I call it like your solo season. Everyone loves a solo. Like, you get to shine, you get to focus on you, and really, that's a great space. So, I want to reclaim that back in the days used to be called an old maid, or all these things. And it's like, no, you're like a fabulous woman who's doing her thing, just taking care of herself, figuring out what she wants and crafting an amazing life. And that multifaceted part is another part of the framework, because I think also we've been putting too much emphasis on romantic love to meet every single need. It takes a village. It takes a village. You need your community. You need your, like, not even your profession, if you have one, or just something that makes you feel alive. You need family, right? You need your girlfriends. If you're in a hetero relationship, you need your girlfriends even more, because they're going to understand things that is probably not going to understand, right? So it really, that's part of helping to create a good environment for love to flourish when not all the pressure is put on that. So we walk through all of that. We look at sort of like how love has left a mark, some of those enduring vulnerabilities, and then we create this. We really just the sensory, visceral vision of what kind of love you want. Like, what do you want your life to look like, and then what kind of person would fit into that, and that will really help prime you for love.
Yes, and I love that you say prime you for love, because I'm like, oh, if we would have gone back in time, if we could rewind and actually come into this, there's probably so many of those 60% conflicts that would not come up, at least, because if you took the time to have those solo seasons, I'm fortunate enough that being a fire wife, that I have lots of solo seasons and I love them. I love my husband, but I get so much stuff done.
Right.
It's creative. And just for me, it's like, I want a self-care day. I'm going to go and get a massage. I'm going to go to the beach. And I don't have to ask anybody. It's great. Right. I have the best of both worlds. And I don't have to date anymore, which is even better.
Yes. It's hard out there. Yes.
It is. So I love what you're bringing to women. And I think that,
thank you.
It's going to make a huge difference. So where can people find you to get in your space to maybe become part of this next program that you're releasing?
Yes. You can find me on my website is sothislove.club. and just look at the Find Love programs. You'll see Reset Yourself Love. You can sign up for my newsletter. You can get my free sort of mini course about how to the first steps to resetting yourself for love. And then you can find me on Instagram at sothissislove.club.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. So if someone were to walk away with just that one little pivotal gold nugget, mic drop moment, what would you want them to remember from this conversation?
Don't abandon yourself. Center yourself and stay there. It's worth it. It's worth it. Don't abandon yourself. Lean into yourself, lean into knowing who you are and what you want and what you deserve. And I promise you, you're not missing out on anything that you didn't deserve in the first place.